Oh, oh my goodness sakes, it is so flat. Hi everyone, I'm Mary from Joyful and Mary Quilting, and today we are talking about a tool that can take your pressing game to the next level. It's called the wooden clapper. If you've seen people using them in quilting videos, but you really weren't quite sure why or how they work, you're in the right place. I'll walk you through what a clapper does, how to use it, and what to do and look for when choosing one. We're also going to compare the flatness of our seams using a variety of pressing methods and tools. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to talk about is what is a clapper. So I have three examples of clappers right here. We have this one that actually the bottom is used as the wood clapper. The top is used for pressing. It's a bit of a pressing bar with a wool mat on it. This is a larger clapper. And then this is a smaller size. They basically are all used in the same manner. They're just either different sizes, possibly different wood, but they achieve the same purpose. They flatten your seams. These have been around forever, maybe centuries. They were used by tailors originally to get those crisp, flat seams when they're using expensive fabrics to make suits or clothing of some sort. And once they would press, they would put the clapper down on the seam, and that would give them those flat seams. Quilters figured that out. Quilters sew a lot of seams, so we decided this would be a good thing for us to use as well. And it really has been. There's really no one inventor when it comes to clappers. It's just something that's come into existence and people have passed the tradition along over and over again over the years. And we're going to test some different methods on how to use the clapper most effectively. I chose these fabrics. They're called Afternoon Tea by Beverly McCullough for Riley Blake Designs, and I just thought they were so pretty. So what I did was I made 16 large half square triangles so that we could test them all out and press them as we go and see which one is best. I also have a little teeny half square triangle that I'm going to show you how we can also use the clapper for smaller pieces. So first of all, let's just take a look at a clapper. Now this clapper is by Love and Sew. It's called a quilter's clapper. It's made of hardwood. I don't know what kind, it doesn't say, but it has a groove on the side, and you can see there's a pretty good groove here. This clapper I got at a Project Linus conference. It's handmade, and it also has this groove. One thing, they are so smooth and so soft. They will not damage your fabric when you place them on the fabric because they are so smooth. So if you get a clapper, you want to make sure you get a good quality one made with hardwood that's nice and flat. Sometimes you can get a discount one. It's not flat on the bottom. It's not going to do you any good. This particular clapper actually has the flat bottom. It's called a You and Me, E-W-E, You and Me. It has a pressing bar on the top, you can see here, that is actually a wool mat that's wrapped over the pressing bar, and then you use the bottom as your clapper when you're finished. Just an added feature to that particular tool. We're going to use these because they're smaller and they fit right here. The groove is not decorative. It might look like it is, but it's not. It's for picking up your clapper and easily handling it so that you don't disturb the seam. You want to make sure that you can easily pick it up and move it. You never push the clapper back and forth. You pick it up, place it down, pick it up, place it down. That's really important. So let's see how we're going to use our clapper on this particular half square triangle. So this is the piece. I'm going to press it in this direction. I'm not using any pressing solution, and I have my clapper ready to go. So let's open this up. I'm going to place my iron on the seam. You hold it, I don't know, 5 or 10 seconds. You want to make sure you get a good press out of it. Sometimes we can overpress, and you don't want to do that. So 5 seconds, pick it up, and immediately put that clapper down. Now this is where you want the clapper to do the work for you. You don't want to press and press and press, scorching your fabric, whatever, but the clapper is going to stay on here until the heat is gone. I would say probably about 20 seconds. Sometimes quilters will have more than one clapper, and then when they get the next piece, they just use the second clapper for their next piece, and then they alternate clappers. The other option is, once you are finished with another piece, you have pressed it, you can move the clapper from this piece to the new one. Totally up to you. You just want to make sure that if you're going quickly, you have enough time underneath the clapper so that it can absorb that heat. Okay, so let's take a look and see what happened. Now, if we look, it is nice and flat. And again, I haven't used anything other than heat. So if you take a look at this, we can see that this piece is laying fairly flat, just using heat, nothing else, and our wool pressing mat. So that's what our first test is going to be. You can see right here, you can redo it. If you see that it's just not quite right, I'm using a small iron here. So if I see that my seam is a little bit raised, I can go ahead and add a little more heat and put my clapper back on. It's important, again, that we keep the clapper on for the longer period of time, not the iron. Now you can see that that helped, because I do have this end that was raised a little bit, actually looks pretty good. So it took me 2 claps in order to get this nice flat seam here. One question that we have is, can you use the clapper sideways? Sometimes we have little teeny pieces such as this one, and we need to press that seam, and we're a little worried that when we put the flat side down, we don't get a real good press. What you can do is, if you look at your clapper, it has this side right here that should be flat, and that can actually be used on the seam to give it a little bit more push. Now again, it's not necessary. You can just use this flat side, but it has been brought up, and I'm just going to show you quickly the way that this works. So I'll take my seam and press it open, about 5 seconds, and I'm ready with that little edge right there. I'm going to take the edge and I'm going to put it right on that flat seam right there. It really does work well using that side piece if you have that small seam, that small piece where you want to be able to see that you've got that piece right underneath the wood. Again, you can do this too. You just want to make sure you have a nice even pressure on that seam. One suggestion that I have seen all over the place is, oh, you need to stack your clappers. You need to make sure you have a lot of heavy pressure on top of that seam in order to make sure the seam comes out flat. You really don't need to do that. Weight is not what we're going for here. It's not the weight of the clapper. It is the absorption of the clapper, and that's why we're using the hard wood. So we want to make sure that when we put the clapper down, the wood is what's absorbing the heat. The weight does not have anything to do with the flatness of that seam. We don't have enough weight here in order to make that seam super flat just from the stacking of the clappers. So that's really not necessary. Now there are also things called clear acrylic clappers, and you've seen them. They're beautiful. I don't have one. The reason I don't have one, acrylic does not hold the heat or the moisture the way that a wood clapper does. In fact, it doesn't hold the moisture at all. So if you're using an acrylic clapper, it'll work if you just have some light pressing, but really this is the kind that you want. You want something made of a nice hard wood. So what kind of wood is important? Does it matter? When I bought this one, I didn't really know a whole lot about what I needed, and all it says is a hard wood. And I know a clapper needs a hard wood, and it has worked well for me, so I'm guessing it's okay. But if you're going to make one or somebody's going to make one for you, what kind of wood is important? Actually, a dense wood, maple, oak, beech, those are the good ones that really work well when it comes to making our own clapper. These dense woods hold up to heat. They resist warping, and they pull out moisture effectively. The lighter softwoods like pine, they just don't work. They just don't have that capacity to do that as well as these do. So once again, I'm just going to go over the steps. We're going to press our seam like we did towards the dark. While it's cooling, we're going to place the clapper 5 seconds to 20 seconds, depending on the thickness of our fabric and our seams. If you're pressing your seams open, it's going to be a little bit less time than if you're pressing them to one side. When the 5 to 20 seconds, however you're doing yours, is up, lift it gently, don't slide it off. Repeat as needed, moving that clapper along the strip or block if it's larger and you need to continually move it. You want to press, get some heat in there, and then place the clapper. It's really important that you don't overpress your seams with the iron. Let the clapper do the work. So we're going to do 6 comparisons with these half square triangles that I cut out. We are going to compare steam, we're going to compare the clapper, we're going to compare just a dry iron, we're going to compare pressing solution using a pressing marker, we're going to compare water and a pressing marker. Let's just see which one works better. The first one I'm going to do, darks fabric on top, I'm going to just press with a dry iron. So first of all, I want to set my seam. And there it's set. That just brings those fabric fibers together with the thread, makes them kind of one. Then we are going to finger press this just because I don't want to get a little bit of a tuck in here. I want to make sure that everything is pressed over. And I'm just going to press this flat with a dry iron. I'm going to hold it for 5 seconds. Okay, and we're going to take a look. It's flat, just like any seam would be. I do notice that it has a bit of a bubble here as it goes over the seam, but it's flat. So that's number one. Our second one, we're going to, once again, set that seam. We're going to push the dark fabric over. Be careful because it's kind of hot right after you do that. You can set that seam after you've sewn it too. You don't have to set it right before you're doing this pressing. Okay, so we've got it this way. Now we are going to use the clapper and the dry iron. So I'm going to do 5 seconds. My clapper is ready. And I'm going to place that on, and it's just going to sit there. Probably 10 seconds. Now, if it's not flat, you can repeat. So we say this has been on 10 seconds. It looks pretty flat. If you take a look at the difference between the first one we did and the second one, it is flatter, definitely. Not a lot, but it is definitely flatter using the clapper. So we know it has done some good here. Let's try it again. Maybe we feel like it's not quite flat enough. Another 5 seconds. And we're going to put the clapper on and hold it for maybe another 10 seconds. Now, it felt cool to me when I touched it. That's what's important. We want to get rid of the heat from the fabric and transfer it into the clapper. So I can kind of feel still pretty warm there, so I'm going to leave it a little bit. And there. Now that is definitely, you can see this, that is definitely flatter using the clapper as compared to just the dry iron. It's not a lot, it's not a huge difference, but I can see from this angle that it definitely is a bit of a difference here. So this is number one, this is number two, dry iron with clapper. Now let's do steam. I don't like to put steam or water in my iron, so I usually just use a little spray bottle and mist it. You can do it either way. If you have it in your iron, you can test it that way. It seems to me a little more powerful. I don't know if that's true, but when I spray it, I think it works well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to spray with water, but I am not going to use a clapper. So once again, set our seam. I'm going to put that dark side on top. I'm going to press this with my fingers. I'm going to just do a little finger press here to make sure that I don't have any tucks. Now I'm going to use my mister bottle and I'm just going to spray this block. Now I'm not going to move my iron. I'm going to make sure that it sits here. You want to make sure that the moisture is dry, your seam is dry. So maybe 10 seconds. You don't want to scorch your fabric, so you want to be careful. Okay, this is nice and flat with the steam. No clapper, just the steam. When we compare them, here's number one, just the dry iron with the clapper, and then dry iron with the mist of water. So that's our three. The next one we're going to do is we are going to use the steam plus the clapper. So once again, set our seam. And I made the blocks a little bit larger just so that they would be easy to see. But of course it works for any size block, any size unit, whether it's, you know, a flying geese unit or a half square triangle or just a block that you're assembling. Now I'm going to use my mist of water, my steam, and I'm going to hold that again until it's dry. And I've got my clapper ready. I'm ready to place the clapper on top of the seam so that I can even get it flatter, hopefully, than I can just with the steam. Again, we don't want to overpress. 5 seconds. You know, we'll do it. The clapper is what's doing the work here, and that's important. I can't tell you how many times a quilter will say, I scorched my fabric. I didn't think I was holding it that long. Because actually when we use fusible webbing or anything, we'll hold it for 15 seconds easily before we move the iron. So we think that it should work, but sometimes it's a little difficult to judge how long we should leave that iron there. And the clapper is very helpful that way because it takes away that guesswork. We just want to make sure that it's cool once we remove it. And it's still a little bit warm there and I can feel it. And this is where it's helpful then, if we're going to do it again, leave that clapper on and use a different clapper for the next block if we're doing some chain piecing. Okay, so let's take this off. Oh yeah, this is very nice. Once again, we've got our steam, and it's hard to see, I know, from the angle, but I can tell that this is laying nice and flat. They both actually, the steam works well, but the clapper gives me that finish to my entire block since I did spray it all, and I really like that look. So that's number 4. The last 2 ways I'm going to test this, and this is just me personally, I wanted to see if this would work. We know the clapper works. We can see that it actually does flatten our seams out. But I always use a pressing marker on my seams. This is just an empty paint marker, acrylic paint marker that I have filled with water, and I filled with my pressing solution, which is Terreal Magic, or Mary Ellen's Best Press, whatever you like. Terreal Magic, I usually dilute it half and half. They always give me very flat seams. I want to see if they're even flatter when I'm using the clapper. So let's check out first water and then Terreal Magic. Once again, I'm going to set my seam. Then I'm going to press toward the dark, so I'm going to finger press it, get all the way to those corners. The first one I'm going to use is water. Now we know that steam worked well, and that was spraying the entire block. And maybe that's an advantage. You want to have steam to spray the entire block. Maybe you don't want to. Maybe it doesn't matter to you. You've already pressed this with a pressing solution before you cut your pieces. So maybe you just want to try and flatten out just the seam using either water or the pressing solution. So I'm going to take this. Now this is how this works. We just paint right along the seam here. And you just push down on your tip if you don't see, but I can see that I've got some nice solution. And it's focused. The water is right on the seam. So I know that when I press this down, it's going to concentrate right here where it needs to be to make that seam flat. Once that's done, I am going to remove the iron and I'm going to put my clapper on it. So let's do that, 5 seconds. And then I'm going to place my clapper. Once again, we have the tendency of really pushing down on this. You don't have to. It's still going to absorb the heat. It's still going to absorb the moisture from the steam that was created. So you just want to make sure that it's there long enough. It needs to be there long enough, 15, 20 seconds, depending on the thickness of your fabric. If you've got a lot of intersections, maybe you're doing a flying geese, or maybe it's a block or unit that has a lot of intersections, you may need to do that a little bit longer in order to achieve the effect that you want. Like this one where I pressed my seams open and I have pressed towards these light fabrics. Okay, so I've had it on there for quite a while. And it is very nice, and oh my gosh, when I feel it, I can feel the difference. Now let me take this one. This was the one that was just the steam, but I did not focus it right on here. And I can definitely feel more of a ridge here than I can feel here. So the pressing marker with water worked really well, and I'm really excited about that. So now let's try the pressing marker with our pressing solution. Now that's what I always use. Although I have used the water, set my seam. So I've set my seam. Now I'm going to press toward that darker fabric with my fingers, just a finger press, get my corners. And now I'm going to actually use, this is the Terreal Magic, and I'm going to do just what I did with the water. I'm going to paint right along the seam. Now you can actually, if you want to, you can paint along the seam right on that seam line when it's still closed. Totally up to you. So now it's here. I know it's right where it needs to go, and I'm going to hold my iron on there. I want to make sure that it's all the way to the edge. This is a little iron, so I can see that, oops, it doesn't always go all the way to the edge. And that means I have to redo it. Okay, I'm going to put this down. Once again, we want to make sure that it is cool just like I've been saying all along. And I have used both the larger, the smaller, and the pressing bar clappers. I don't find there's a difference. I find that they all have worked for me pretty much the same. So you want to make sure, again, as I said before, you want one about 8 to 10 inches. You want one with a groove on the side so you can easily pick it up, and you want to make sure that it is made of a hard wood. That's really important. Not the acrylics, not the pine. You want to make sure that it's made of a hard wood. Oh, you know what? I can't deny it. Actually, the pressing solution in the marker seems to work really well. If you take a look at this, oh my goodness sakes, it is so flat. So I'm going to show you. And the thing is, it's pressed with a pressing solution, so it's not going to come up. It is there for good. Here's my pressing solution. It feels almost so flat, like I can barely tell the difference between the two pieces of fabric. Here's the one that I used with the water, and again, it is really flat, but I do feel a little bit more of a ridge than I feel on this one, so you can feel that. Going backwards, as the other solutions that we used, remember we pressed using the clapper and using our steam. It's not even close to as flat as it is when I used my pressing solution and my clapper. And then, of course, going back all the way to the first one. Now, comparing those two, here's the one that we used that was just a dry iron. And here's the one that we used with the clapper, the pressing solution on the seam. The difference is huge. I'm going to give you a bonus test just because I thought I always just use my pressing marker and I don't use a clapper. So, is it going to make a difference if I do use one? Now we know using it here, it is super, super flat. But let's just test it out without using the clapper and see how flat it actually is all by itself, just using the pressing marker and my iron. Now keep in mind that I always spray my fabrics with a pressing solution before I cut them, and I did not do that for these. So I just want to make sure the test was equal, but normally I would do that as well. So I've got the pressing solution right on the seam, and I'm just going to press it open. We press it till it's dry, and there it's dry. Now the way that I can tell is I can feel it. So I'm going to touch this again, very flat. This one is not quite as flat as this one. I can feel a teeny bit more of a ridge here than I feel here using the clapper. The clapper makes a big difference. I had absolutely no idea how flat. I thought I could get these blocks as flat as ever just using my pressing solution and my iron. Now I realize my pressing solution in the marker and my clapper along with my iron really makes a huge difference, makes those seams even flatter. So have you tried using a clapper before? Let me know in the comments how it has changed your pressing. And if you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and don't forget to check out my other quilting tips right here on this channel. Until next time, press smart, quilt joyfully, and keep those seams as flat as pancakes. I'm always trying to be joyful, but I will always be merry. Thank you so much for joining me.